Well, Texas lawmakers are holding a series of health care forums over the next few days, and one of them, hosted by Republican Congressman Joe Barton, should be wrapping up here shortly. Ed Lavandera is there. He's been watching it all unfold. Pretty fiery, or not so bad today?
Well, far from what we've seen in other parts of the country, but probably it has a great deal to do with the fact that Joe Barton is a longtime Republican congressman from this district here south of about 2 hours south of Dallas, halfway between Dallas and Houston, in the small town of Marquez. But several hundred people gathered here this afternoon inside this Baptist church. It was standing room. The crowd kind of spilled out into the streets. But what's interesting about this one is that there weren't necessarily a whole lot of pointed questions about specifics in the health care plan. There is a great deal of mistrust and uncertainty about the Democratic plan here, which we heard over and over from this crowd. So it was a little bit of the choir preaching to themselves here. So there weren't a lot of specific questions. But Congressman Barton had pulled out, one of the interesting points was Congressman Barton had pulled out a flow chart of how this new plan would work. And one of the more interesting moments is when he pulled out the actual initial bill that has been proposed by Democrats on the House side, that 1,000-page behemoth of a bill. And it was interesting because as he pulled that out, the crowd kind of gasped at its size here. So really, most of this meeting was kind of kept to broad thematic themes. And what we heard over and over again from the crowd here in Marquez, Texas, is that there is a great deal of anger and distrust over the Democratic plan and what will happen to it here in the coming months. That's not to say that they were incredibly happy with the way the Republicans have been handling all of this in this debate as well. So there were several speakers who came out saying that they weren't happy with the way Republicans had been kind of battling on the opposite side of this. So Congressman Barton leaving this gathering here this afternoon in Marquez, Texas, with an earful. Christy?
Yeah, congressmen and women really seem to be under the gun too, I think, because I've heard so many people talking about the fact that they don't think our congressmen and women will actually read this bill fully and thoroughly. Was that brought up at all, or is there just a general distrust amongst everybody there?
Well, it's actually one of the first things that Congressman Barton had talked about. I guess if he knew if he was going to pull out that bill, someone was going to ask him if he had read it. In his words, he said he has read most of it, but it was that he hasn't been able to get through all of it. He says that he has looked at least at every page, but that's the way he left it here with the crowd.
All right. Well, it'll be interesting to see how it pans out. Hey, Ed Lavandera, we appreciate it as always. Now, President Obama today is saying thank you to the country's veterans. He made the comments at the National Convention of the Veterans of Foreign Wars today. This is in Phoenix. The president told the crowd he considers the men and women in uniform to be a precious national resource.
Whether you wear the uniform today or wore it decades ago, you remind us of a fundamental truth. It's not the powerful weapons that make our military the strongest in the world. It's not the sophisticated systems that make us the most advanced. The true strength of our military lies in the spirit and skill of our men and women in uniform.
Now, the president promised the military will get the resources it needs to successfully carry out its missions, and he vowed to tackle the mental health issues plaguing those returning from Iraq and Afghanistan head-on and without delay. Now, the president's speech to the VFW prompted some protesters to gather outside of that venue. They're voicing their opposition to the health care reform proposals. Supporters of President Obama were in full force, though, too. Just today, the president hinted that he would be willing to forego a federal insurance plan for co-ops that would compete with private insurance. Health and Human Services